Meeting to order at 6 p.m. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kylie, roll call, please.
Gilman.
Yep.
Horn.
Here.
Lehman.
Here.
Underwood.
Here.
Hammond.
Here. Okay. I don't see any blue sheets here, regarding any additions to the agenda. Does anyone on the board wish to add, anything to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. So move. Support. Motion by Commissioner Underwood, support by Commissioner Horn to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Does anyone have any conflict of interest regarding any agenda items? No. Okay, seeing none. Public comment. Does anyone from the public have any comment at this point? Okay. On to action items. We have no appointments under A, so 7B consent calendar. Eileen?
The consent calendar is used to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together without discussion. Requests by any person present to remove any item from the consent calendar for full discussion as agenda items are automatically respected. The action noted in parentheses for all items remaining on the consent calendar are approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. The manager recommends the following items be adopted. 1, minutes. 2, payroll. 3, accounts payable. 4, financial report. 5, communications, and 6, Act 51 report for 2023.
Thank you. Does any member of the board wish to remove any items from the consent calendar? Does any member from the public wish to remove any items from the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please. Oh, actually, I'm sorry.
Motion to approve the support.
There's a motion from Commissioner Lehman, supported by Commissioner Gilman to approve the consent calendar as presented. Thank you. A roll call, please.
Horn. Yes. Lehman.
Yes.
Underwood.
Yes.
Gilman.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes. All right. 7C is no items, so we move on to 7D reports. Commissioners to discuss any items from the staff report. And the staff report is, I believe, on page 78 of the packet. Does anyone have any questions regarding anything on the consent on the staff report? I just have one question regarding IT, obviously, because of the ransomware threat at the county, and there have been other incidences nationally. Where are we on our IT, on our systems? What I see that the staff report says that we are buying hardware and upgrading software. So
yeah, so Bill Ungers, who we work with, as soon as we heard second that it happened there, I got with Rachel. I told her to reach out to Bill, kind of lock us down a little bit, and really keep a tight eye on us. I think I know some of our little more emails are going to
Yeah, we
be
enforce.
protected.
Yeah, we enforce multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, Bill has this called Northguard, and it monitors all of our systems, and we've had really good luck with it so far.
Yeah, it's nice when the Conservation Resource Alliance, the emails go to quarantine.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm seeing more
You
emails
know,
going to.
I know we're a little tighter now. That's okay. That's all right.
Do we have any systems on cloud, or can we have any systems on cloud?
We have some stuff. Larry and Rachel can probably speak better to what actual programs are on it.
So we kind of have a mixed environment, which means that we have servers that are hard servers that reside in the basement. Then we have some cloud-based. It's kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with Google Docs.
Mhm.
It's like that. It's like Microsoft, their version of the cloud. So we do have files out there and it's kind of a mix, but the majority of our stuff is on hardware in our basement. Okay, so
We don't have a redundancy program.
we have a backup program. Yes, redundancy would live, well, the idea was eventually to have a redundancy at Kingsley. At our new facility, but we're working through some of that.
But in terms of data protection right now, you're just running RAID.
Right. You know, you'll see the quarantine stuff with multi-factor authentication, which Ray's we're working on right now, which you guys might even see a little bit of that, but it's basically, you know, your phone sends you a code or your computer sends you a code and you gotta put in the code to get into your email or face recognition or something like that. Because we have with our insurance company, if we do MFA, they help us with recovery if anything does go bad.
We get hired when that's, is it a nightly backup?
I believe it is a nightly backup on certain things, on really, really important stuff. But if we did a nightly backup, it would take
A lot of, much.
for everything. We do nightly backups for the.
So in other words, we're in good shape.
We are, but we are
Not gonna-
obviously nervous all the time. You know?
Yeah,
So
and
gotta
we
do
should
that.
be.
Yeah.
So that's good to be nervous so that we are over prepared rather than under prepared. I just had on the east-west corridor, it says that we have submitted a couple of grants. One is the RAISE grant has been submitted for planning and design of South Airport Road and Logan's Landing. Do you know what the time frame is?
Yeah, actually, I was gonna speak on that one in my comment, but I can do it right now. So the raised grant, we did not get, it came back in actually yesterday. I got an email saying that we did not receive it. They said that it was the Biden organization did $66.9 million to Michigan for that. Detroit got some for a road, Kalamazoo and a Menominee. And they kind of split it evenly between the three.
Okay.
So
What was the criteria? I mean, what do you get I guess, do we get an explanation on why when a request is denied?
why I didn't, I'll let you know real quick. I don't think it overly went over it, but I'm sure I can get more information on it. If we wanted to.
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out like what
So we had WSP working on that for us.
Okay.
Some different grants and unfortunately, looked like it was a great candidate for it. They were actually feeling pretty hopeful for it, but.
And then the other one is the SS4A, the Safe Streets and Roads for All. That doesn't say what that grant was for, and also if we.
So that one is more for studying and doing different things like that. I'm hearing that there's it hasn't been released yet, but I talked to John Caters at OHM and he's like, I'm 99% sure you guys are gonna receive that grant. That's for $300,000.
Okay.
But you can't use it for any sort of infrastructure, building roads. It has to be purely for the study phase. And then you apply for grants from there. And those one goes more like the infrastructure of actually building. So
it's listed under the east-west corridor. So if we get the grant, what kind of study would we be conducting with those grant
a
funds?
lot of things like when you see Derek with the safe streets, like looking at different intersections, certain ones like that, we could start to do more studies on those. And then that'll actually give us more information to have a better chance of receiving grants to fix those intersections. I'm still learning about it myself. I'm hoping that maybe we can use it to support like some sort of plan, spend money in that direction.
And what's the time frame for when we would hear whether we get it or not?
He acted like we should hear about it any day now.
Is it a federal grant?
Yes.
Federal grant. Any questions?
The money went to 3 cities in Michigan.
66 million?
Detroit, Kalamazoo, and Menominee.
$66 million went to 3 cities.
Yeah. That's why I was wondering what those projects were, and
No, it
How-
looked like they were very big
how-
projects.
If there was any explanation.
Like upgrades in the Detroit area on like some of the highways and nothing major. When I kind of breezed through the email, I mostly just noticed that we didn't receive it.
Well, I mean, prevailing wage is like $3,000 an hour right now, so. It is a federal grant.
Any questions regarding any items on the staff report? All right, well, is there anything again that you wanted to discuss, or would you rather have it under your comment?
I've got a couple comments at the end.
Okay. All right, item E, commissioner updates. This is for commissioners to give an update on any meeting that they have had within the last month. We'll start from.
I've had no meetings last.
All right,
I've had no meetings, but I just wanted to make a comment, you know, we, in our special meeting, talking about having money or not having money or, you know, enough to keep the roads moving in a positive direction, yada, yada, yada. And I reflect on the Paul Bunyan conference where basically, you know, they said, well, we've got more money, but our money doesn't go as far. Well, the reason the money doesn't go as far is because our competitive forces are just petering out. And I think I'd like to fall back into, we have to insert some kind of competitive force. So naturally, we can't just build somebody else's business. So the competitive edge that we have to have is just the willingness to say no. Just no. If something comes in, if we have an engineer prepare an estimate and it's something that's going to work for us or work for our people out here who are doing special assessments, yada, yada, yada. If those people who are bidding our projects are coming in consistently over, we just have to stop them saying, okay, just take our money. That's just has to stop. And at some point they will want to maybe sharpen their pencils a little bit. Because we can't be the victims of you know, well, we have to do it. I mean, that's going to drive us in the wrong direction, and it's going to keep us coming up short when we really need the funds. Unless it's a critical emergency project, we just have to stop saying, okay, sure, whatever you want to charge us. Because how many times in the last, you know, how many times have we come over budget, you know, or gone over the estimate by 10 or 20% in the last 2 years, 3 years? It's just downright stupid. And it's not because he's not doing his job, right?
But didn't you say something about the estimator tool? I thought there was a comment last meeting about something with what you use to estimate. Is it maybe need some tweaking, or I thought there was something we had talked about.
Well, that may well be.
Yeah.
That may
Like,
well
is there something we can provide that's a better tool for you? Maybe is what I'm saying. Do you think there's something inadequate about what you guys have?
I think when the SAD projects, you're just looking at those a little differently.
SADs are gonna be a little different, 'cause it's smaller quantities, and things of that nature.
Okay.
But whatever projects we have, if it's a long stretch of road or if it's an SAD, I mean, I'm just saying we need to be able to say, okay, that doesn't work for us, and maybe we just don't do that right now. And then we'll start to look, maybe we start at that point, we start looking a little further out and trying to package up a whole bunch of those undone projects and make it worthwhile somebody coming up and mobilizing at one fell swoop and taking care of it. But we need to have the wherewithal to say, you know, we're going to put up with a little bit of public unhappiness because the road's still crappy for an extra 3 or 4 months or a year. We just have to be able to put up with it. And
Well, Heider, you had that,
other
last year you suggested that we perhaps bundle to bring another contractor in to do some of these jobs. And it's not unheard of and it's not unethical. And we just have to look at those and say, what, and I do think some of our biggest disappointments have been in the SADs, and Derek's well aware of what happened on those, and it wasn't him. And we're being more cautious about those, but we have to have some discipline. If something comes in like that, we say, yeah, if this was at X money, we're comfortable with this project. At X plus 20%, we're not comfortable with the project. We have to be willing to do. I believe we have to say no to it.
Yeah, I mean, one idea is if we establish a threshold as to a certain bid, if it's like you suggested, if like we won't go above 5% of the engineer's estimate, and if it's above 5%, we are going to either rebid it or but we could put that kind of a rule upon ourselves, but and create a carve out an exception for critical projects or.
Well, that, and
as
then
needed
that's what you'd have
projects.
to do is you
Right.
have,
Yeah, I mean, that's something that could be done on just at a board level so that we could impose some fiscal discipline upon ourselves in the future.
But my whole point is just, we need to, as a board, just kind of say, okay, let's readjust how readjust our priorities to some extent, and just say, can we weather the storm if we have to, hold things off and then perhaps bundle as to get more bang.
We did it when Joe and I first got on the board. We had this telecommunications thing that was a little bit of a fiasco, and security. And the board, I think that was you were the chairperson then.
I was the main complainer too.
Okay, and you were right. What we did need what was offered. What we offered was not what we needed, and the price was not what we were prepared to spend. And there's no, just because we put something out for bid does not necessarily mean, okay, we're going to have to do this. Whatever happened with the security and the phones seem to be just fine. I don't hear any, I'm not hearing any complaints about it.
Yeah. We wound up upgrading the phone system, and that kept us up where we needed to be. But if it came down to it, I'd donate a system here for cameras if we had to, so.
I will be glad to take you.
I'm serious, I can't, because I just.
So be part of the minutes. I'll make sure. Into the minutes.
All right.
Official.
I'm sort of jumping in and commenting on your.
That's all right. I appreciate the input. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. I attended meetings, but nothing relevant to the road commission.
Yeah, I was gonna
so-
say I had nothing, I updated last 2 weeks ago, so.
Yeah, we were just here 2 weeks ago. So we attended Senator McManus's funeral today. Just want to make a note about that today. If anybody didn't have a chance to read about his service to our district and what he did, and he was laid to rest today with his family, and Joe and I were there. Something just a thank you to him for all he did for all those years.
All right, okay, so the next item is kind of, I think Commissioner Gilman probably already addressed item F, which is commissioner's discussion on any other matters.
Yeah.
But I'll go around the table.
I do have something on
Okay.
the grants. We're applying for some grants. We have talked about those grants a lot. And we decided, do we need a staff position to do grants? We had a young neighbor from downstate move in, and she's a grant writer. And I mentioned something to her, and I said, well, were you interested? She said, well, I'm really kind of interested in, I'm a childbearing age, and I'm really interested in my kids. But if you had something that was part-time and I didn't have to leave home to do it, I'd be interested in talking to you. So have we gotten anywhere on talking about grant writing anymore?
I believe the board authorized the position.
When you were chair. I
Yeah.
thought.
When you were chair.
When you were chair.
If we needed, we authorized them to go ahead and add a.
Well,
grant, right?
if, I don't know if this person has any, I don't know anything though.
Yeah.
But it's something she has some experience at, and there are opportunities, and we haven't been done real well apparently, even though we're paying WSP, who we think is a good firm.
But they're only limited to, I believe, only to the
The East-West corridor is what we
Yeah,
authorize.
Yeah,
Right.
I believe their grant
I think the contract was
is limited to that. Corridor project.
If there's any other opportunities, to let us know, and then they're gonna keep their eye on it, they'll come to us with the opportunities.
Yeah.
Is that a year? I can't remember. Was that a multi-year
I believe it was a dollar amount.
or dollar?
But you know, those grant writing, in-house grant writing projects, they don't have to be full-time. So they couldn't, and they definitely can be remote.
Absolutely.
So that's. if
I'll have
you-
some discussion
Yeah.
with Dan about that then.
Right.
One thing I have been noticing is it doesn't seem like there's a lot of opportunity out there for grants for roads and different opportunities. Of course, if somebody had time to investigate more, would probably be good. I just read up a little bit more and I just forwarded the link to everyone. About that raised grant. It looks like they tied that in with like, more of like safe streets. They had sidewalks involved in it. It seemed like that got approved. So.
Well, one would think that fix the Lake Roads budget going on here, we would have had some grants coming out of that, right?
Yeah.
No,
We can look at things though, like the Conservation Resource Alliance project with Diamond Park Bridge. That's kind of a interesting relationship. They wanted to save fish habitat. We needed a bridge. I mean, there's opportunities there. So maybe looking at grants that are more bigger picture than just road grants could, well, for instance, I recently was involved in one that, we became the first transit oriented development funded housing project in Michigan, which is right there. But, I look for grants for housing and I sure wasn't looking for bus grants, but it turned into the biggest amount of money. The single largest investment in housing ever from the state of Michigan and Lansing was for phase one. I know Jason loves that, but my point is, this is becoming very obvious. We all just heard about the federal granting and we know that $66 million was given to Michigan and it came nowhere near us. We all know what happened at 5:30 this morning in Lansing. An abysmal budget, not liked by either side, that created no road funding for us. We have a lower money coming to us from the tax, the gas tax. And, like we were saying, 200 different granted projects for Michigan and 12 go north of Clare. Was it Clare? Yeah,
North of Flint.
or Flint. 12 out of 200. We don't have representation in Lansing. We're clearly not doing well in Washington. I think the grants are the way. But you got to think of it more like in housing, we don't get a lot of money either. So you think about a transit oriented development, I mean, whatever it is, you'd be surprised where it comes from. We have opportunities in roads, maybe like housing does too. And a lot of people do grants, like great people are working from home and making extra money doing that. They're not payrolled employees. They're not on the benefit program. And I think it's worth a shot. And I'm glad you brought it up because I think what happened this morning reminds us that we don't have a place at the table in Lansing for roads.
we have no champion at least for sure.
Nothing.
Want to do any matters to discuss?
I wanted to ask, Commissioner Gilman, is that both facilities you're gonna give cameras to? Or is this
I think we actually budgeted for a security system for things that we did not have figures, so. No, I mean, the thing is, a few cameras is better than none, and I could easily put a couple of systems, but
On that note, we have to declare a conflict and stuff. You have some expertise in there, just like Eider has some in the legal department. If we have expertise in that and you would want to be involved in something that we want and need. If you sold us something that I don't believe that would be inappropriate at some point.
Well, hold on, it was the word donate. I think you are expanding it to, I didn't hear the word
No,
stole.
no.
Okay, that's a very clear terms, and the minutes shall reflect the donate.
Let me clarify too, is that I'm not above giving away seconds.
Yes, that's true.
The other option is Dan
my
and
only
Larry
other-
sitting with their cell phone watching things at the Kingsley building. Swapping
My
out security.
other comment or
Yes.
discussion is a shout out probably more to Elmer's as somebody who uses the latest roundabout every day.
Yeah,
It's wonderful.
it's really nice.
That was nice.
Wonderful.
I didn't have
Oh,
somebody
yeah, that is
who
nice.
waters the plants. I'm like, God, I'm not sure.
Let me know you're ready to have that conversation.
Plant gnomes.
We just had rain, right?
But no, the roundabout is wonderful. I was glad it was early. It appears to be doing exactly what we hoped it would for safety.
You know, it's an observation on the way over here. I left home around like little after 5, and by the time I got to Cass Road roundabout, it was about, I looked at my car clock and it said like 5:17. And the traffic was backed up on Cass Road, right? At past that curve, and by the time I made it to the roundabout and turn around, that traffic on Keystone was backed up to this traffic light at Hammond. And I honestly didn't realize how heavily traveled that road is during that time. It was pretty, and that's after Grandview Parkway has been opened, because previously I thought it was because of the diversion, but it's not. This is the normal traffic volume on this road.
No, the
around
bridge has
that
to be
time.
built at some point.
Yes, I mean,
It
something
is
has
what
to
it
be
is. We don't have-
done, but we don't have the money,
Right.
but it's, and that traffic is not, that volume is not gonna just decrease. So, it was pretty eye-opening, but. Okay, moving on to item G, road infrastructure, and I asked that to be put on the agenda for this meeting because it is a continuation of the discussion from a special meeting. And all the commissioners, there was a consensus that we want to keep talking about infrastructure. We want to keep talking about how to fund and maintain and bring up some of the quality of especially our local paved roads. So there's no set format. I'll start, I think, first with Dan and then Derek or whoever, and then we'll come out, go to the board members and just see if we can get into more specifics regarding how we want to address the issue of our existing infrastructure and make sure that it's being treated equitably between the primary roads.
The chance to sit down and talk with Derek a little bit before the meeting. We just talked about a couple of things that we thought were throughout the other meetings that might be, you know, a good starting point to talk about. Talk about the local match going from raising that to that 500,000. That was a good spot to talk. SADs for good talking to clarify, and then getting more into that 50% match policy on through locals, which is again a term that we coined. So looking at maybe some car count numbers and how do we start to identify, you know, start to move away from these primaries and look at some of these local roads. What is going to quantify why we choose to look at that road? A lot of people or different townships are going to say, hey, I went through local. If there's 10 that come to us, what is the one that we're going to look at first? You know, if one has 400 cars a day, then one has 2,500 cars a day. We just need to start to set some of those parameters to explain, you know, why those ones are getting, you know, more precedent to look at first. So.
Okay. Does anyone, Gary, did you have anything to?
No, I was thinking like local throughs too. I mean, connectivity is probably big for those, car counts, like you said. And just what is it servicing? Is it going to a hospital, school or something to that effect? We're generating a lot of traffic that needs to get there.
So when you talk about these possible criterias, are you talking about it in terms of a policy approved by this board? Are you talking about more in terms of internal engineering or
something set by the board of a standards that could turn into a, like, this is our like we have a local you know, policy of this is kind of what we look at for local throughs, and this is, you know, our board voted on this. This is why we're following this, not just, you know. Something I forgot to mention, I want to bring up real quick too. We did do some more digging into the 80% of where did that number come from, the primary roads. I actually had to reach out to some past staff that luckily were willing to talk to me. Joe Slanecki, we still work with them quite a bit. He's a vendor now. And he said when he was part of writing that original proposal, and what they did is they got that from CRA. That was actually kind of a statewide, so that all, you know, counties were trying to, you know, one wasn't 80, one wasn't 20, everybody was trying to be around 80. Now, he said that's a goal. It doesn't say how fast you have to try to reach that goal. It can be over focusing more on your locals, but still trying to reach that goal. He said it can affect funding a little bit if you don't, trying to maintain or reach that goal, with your MTF funding.
Well, we're the closest, most of the counties in the state. You know, as far as reaching the goal, whether we ever reach it, you know.
So I would like to start with the topic of the cost sharing and township allocation for discussion. Last time at the special board meeting, we talked about, we didn't make any decision on increasing the cost sharing from 500 to million because we talked about that we might want to have a policy that would actually address it in more detail as to how townships could use that allocation, because right now under existing policy, they can only use it on local roads, but they can't use it as part of the subdivision roads. And then the discussion came into, well, let's just look at the entire policy itself as to, I think they were talking about like, you know, proportion by mileage within the townships of things of that nature. I don't know how far we are from developing that. Obviously, the previous meeting, we talked about policy committee reviewing that, but I don't even know if a draft has been prepared. And we are coming to the budget year pretty soon where we'll start having the discussion in the next few months.
If I were to envision it, okay, I think the policy people need to sit down, Phil, and look at the increase as it may or may not be, whether it may or may not be available. And also, you use high volume throughs or high volume locals, I think is what we were talking about, versus the throughs. Maybe we have a different approach, a little more detailed, something where we might offer a better match for certain types of roads that we are trying to encourage. And maybe, you know, in other words, so that the townships can kind of get the idea, okay, you know, look, I mean, we're gonna, these are the more important things that we need to address. These are the more important roads we need to address. And I think that would be a good place to start, you know, talking about as far as tweaks to the policy.
Something I'd like to see with that too is townships that are willing to kick in.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a 50% local match. So if a township wants to match and partner with us, maybe they don't have the full 50%, but they have 40%, but nobody else is bringing anything to the table. Maybe they have a lower tower count, but still, I think that's helping our road infrastructure get further along. I think that should be somehow weighted in there.
Are we talking just paved roads right now?
Yes.
Okay. I do some questions on the non-paved roads.
Okay. I guess before I need to know, Phil, from you, I don't know how, I don't want to keep putting stuff on you, you know, in terms of coming up with what realistically speaking, how soon can you start working on this policy for cost sharing with the townships and making those tweaks to it, adjustments?
We just got the audit submitted. So that's off my plate right now.
Okay.
It's on the state's website. I do have a state trunk line audit that I need to get caught up on, because I'm not been hounding to get that going. So I got to put a little bit of time into that, but then I was going to get into some policies and.
Okay.
There's one policy we kind of put on the back burner that I would like to look at first. And that's, we've talked about that quite a bit, with spending amounts and spending authorities and stuff like that. But I think that's probably a
The
bigger
purchase policy, yeah.
hindrance to staff currently. If we could get through that one first.
Well, that's fine. I do want to move on this. If we are gonna make that increase from 500 to 1 million, I don't want that held up because we are looking at a bigger picture. Either we address that bigger picture later on and we make the increase,
The dollar,
you know,
I think should be part of the budget
yeah,
process,
right.
you know, because that can change and how we match and what types of projects and that should be more of the policies. How do we treat gravel roads versus asphalt roads versus subdivisions versus seasonals?
Okay, so we can increase the cost sharing with the townships with, before we actually have a actual policy in place as to how we would have the townships use their sharing. Is that what?
Yeah, we kind of had like more of an informal, I think it it was like a standard operating procedure on how we were going to allocate the funds and, you know, let townships bank it.
We just passed around was the local match policy currently, and then on the other side has the allocation what each township has currently. But you could almost look at it maybe as two separate issues. You could raise that and stay with the current one, but then we want to start letting them spend it on SADs or different, you know, things like that. Those would start to become policies, I believe.
Well, look, last time when we talked about, okay, can we do it at this meeting? Can we make a motion to increase it from 500,000 to $1 million and then remove the restriction on the townships to just use it on local roads? That's what prompted the discussion. I was like, well, wait a minute, let's look at, I'm willing to go at today's meeting with if the rest of the board, but my understanding was that there were some concerns about doing that. You know, and of just simply making those two decisions.
I guess it
Did I
depends
miss
on where do we want to push township involvement in? Is it only going to be SADs, or do we want to really try to have them partner on the local roads that before we used to have, you know, a higher match, they would match 75% and we did 25, and we've been trying to make it more equitable and trying to pull them in to bring them into the table to take more interest in the local road network, because the Act 51 money just isn't there.
If I might also just, if we do say double the allocation. We've been okay with allowing kind of a pull ahead from 3 years or this and that. We shouldn't be doing that because I mean, it tends to multiply the things. And
Oh, you mean for them to?
to borrow
borrow
against it for 3 years, you know, because then
I
the next couple of years they're like, oh, we don't have any money again, you know, but
I think we would still probably need that if we're gonna entice them, because right now, putting 3 years together, we're not really enticing them, so that even if we double it, you put 3 years together, that's more than we're offering currently.
maybe have some, again, some side notes as far as policy goes or caveats.
So for example, I'm looking at this handout that was passed around under C. It talks about subdivision site developments, PUDs, residential roads, etc. will require 100% funding from township and or SAD. Road commission will contribute in-kind engineering services limited to staff availability. So if we were to just simply tweak that C to say, to remove the 100% funding and change it to 50%.
I think it would change the project immediately.
Right. It's not a drastic change. It's essentially saying that, look, we are opening up the ability for the road commission to actually utilize some of those fund 50% or whatever
I
funding.
think what Phil was starting to talk about last time is, correct me if I'm wrong, and I've heard a couple different numbers. So roughly for MTF, we get $5,700 per lane mile.
A little over 3,000. We get 5 million total for local roads from the state of Michigan.
So I think what Phil was thinking, if it was in a actual subdivision, they're gonna do an SAD, that maybe you limit it to, you get $3,000 per mile. So say you have 2 miles on a subdivision, that's $6,000. You let them use two years worth, that we would do the $12,000 versus allowing the funds we're trying to get elsewhere, that all of a sudden we're putting, $6,000
Into a half mile.
and you're never going to recuperate that funding off of that road and somehow limit it that way.
So can we put a cap on how much of that the cost sharing amount that they get? How much could they use on an SAD?
We could do something.
Policy.
Right, I understand, yeah.
You can do it. You can do it.
I mean, are there any ideas as to what that should be if we go the cap route? So they still can use that cost sharing, I think the concern is we don't want townships to kind of just use all that money on a subdivision
Right.
road at the expense of ignoring their.
That makes sense.
Oh,
Right,
yeah,
that's-
so-
which, it would seem to me that we, for the benefit of most of the taxpayers in the county, that the policy should be focused on local throughs. And the subdivisions will contribute. Oh, we've appreciated, like when Mayfield Township brought the money to the table.
Mhm.
If a township is bringing money to the table, kind of cash talks and how that goes, we've appreciated that. And I think we should, because if there are others willing to approve our road, which is what we want, improve roads, and they can bring it, we need to be able to recognize that and to take advantage of it. But I think if we're talking about like an allocation of MTF for local roads, I think we should try to keep that with stuff that are not subdivisions. Honestly, I believe.
So you're in favor of keeping it as is, that subdivision roads should be funded purely through SAB?
I'm not saying not purely, but I would like to see that the bulk of our efforts go to improve roads more people would use.
Sure, I mean.
Because I can think of the roads, Bluff Road, we're not gonna, we can't, we don't have a solution for that. But let's say we wanted to repair a section of that there's quite a few cars on. That's different than Riverside or Riverview or a street that's lousy, that's connected to that 14 residents use. I would appreciate if we could spend our money on the projects that would see most of the taxpayers use.
And I have a kind of a different angle. First of all, I know we always call them local roads. Why can't we call them township local roads? Why can't we give township ownership? Right now, the local road, that's still our road.
You want to call them township roads? Take out local.
Maybe we should start calling them township roads or township local roads so that the township has buy-in. And I would also like to see us, if we have a road that's failed, if we have a road that's like, what was 29, what's failure, 10?
Probably like 20.
Whatever it is, if we have a road that's failed. And the township's willing to do it, and the people on the road are willing to do it, and we can pulverize that back, we should just cover the cost of pulverize it back to a gravel road. Cause that'll save us money and water. And it'll raise the rate of the entire system, because we now have a good gravel road versus a failed.
I would want to take input from the people who are on that.
That's what I mean, they have to agree to it, but if they're willing to do that.
It may work on some roads, but it may not work on.
But I'd like to see something like that too, because then we could take the worst roads. You can either wait for your turn, which will be whenever, or we'll take it back to gravel and take care of it.
Town line. We Jason and I did talk about this. And Derek was involved. We had a few months ago, we had a meeting about this. Like, I lived in a little subdivision out by Long Lake. The road was never paved. It was chip sealed twice, and that was the road. That was acceptable to us. When I moved in there, that was better than a gravel road. It was a double chip seal. It was not very expensive.
Yeah.
Builder paid for it. That was it. We could, and it's, you could drive out there today and you'd say, gee, this chip seal road's got some kind of crummy edges on it. And some, the road commission's passed a few things, but I moved in there in 1980 and I don't think anything was done. And it was acceptable to that subdivision. And there might be, Joe, there might be a place where we could say in this subdivision, the people had that before and it was 50 years old. And we pulverized that and did a double chip seal in there. We might find that, right now our policy is 3.5 inches of asphalt paving. Or 30 feet wide. Right? Or what?
34, 32.
And it doesn't need to be that.
It doesn't need to be that way. So if we have alternate ideas to bring up the quality of the road network and meet our constituents' standards, that would be acceptable to us.
Okay, so we need to meet and talk about the possibilities on that, and meet with the engineer. And then we can give it to these guys and let them work on.
But ties into a whole nother policy that we have, our safe streets, is that we have in there 5-foot shoulder.
Right.
So that's where,
Safe Streets says that. I think that's in the development handbook.
If the state streets references our policy, it should be the 32 foot wide with the 5 foot.
That comes back to where your 32 can come from, unless you're 5 foot. Yeah, off the state streets.
So it's the same thing, like in order for the policy committee to work on some of these issues, we require the input of, like, for example, the streets that you're talking about in order, because we need to know, okay, what is it that you are asking for? And then we can work on it in the policy. The same way I'm trying to figure out in terms of the subdivision roads and what is the board's consensus? One option is we leave it as is. That the way it has been that 100% for those roads funding would have to be either come through an SAD or through the township, and we'll submit income, we'll provide in-kind engineering services. Or are there other options that because we recently in the last few months, most of the issues that we have dealt with are in subdivision roads and Garfield, Long Lake, up in Holiday Hills. So these are not isolated incidences that we are talking about, and so that's why we have been having this discussion of, is there a better way to handle this?
Right. But if the people in the neighborhood subdivisions are willing to accept something we can support, that might be different than our, back 10 months ago, we were working on corridors and we had some pretty fancy boards, and some of those roads included in our corridors are local roads. And that's where I think we need the most improvement, and we need to have a higher standard of in places where there's less traffic and there's not any way to fund them other than the local people paying for them. I would certainly support that we decide what's something that's acceptable in that case. But I would like us to spend the majority of our funding on the roads that more people use. And then in these neighborhoods, we have a couple alternate plans, and
Yeah, that's.
we give the people, okay, we're going to pay for a road. Well, it's $10,000 each property owner. Well, we don't have $10,000. We're not going to get. We have zero chance of getting the people in this neighborhood to vote for, which is not a lot today, which isn't to vote for $10,000. What if we have a $3,000 alternate that they're happy with? Does that make our road system better and our rating scores higher in there? And we'd say, it's not, it's not like paving a superhighway in there, but it would be acceptable.
Maybe 3,000 over 5 years versus 10,000 over 10 years is a little more acceptable to somebody,
When they already say we pay taxes and you guys won't support our, well, I live on a road that probably should be these were, frankly, and I'm not out collecting petitions from the neighbors because I don't want to right now, but there are things that I could approach my neighbors with, and there are numbers that I believe I couldn't. And some of our policies will bring it to numbers that are quite expensive for the individual property owners. But I think our funding.
To his question, though, he's basically asking, we were talking about allowing the townships to basically take that share into those. And you answered it, but I tend to let's not encourage more of that necessarily. I mean, we want to encourage it, but let's prioritize and encourage more of the high volume locals, I think.
Anyone else?
I think we need to pay attention to the subdivisions because most people live in them and in residential areas. And it makes it difficult because we have a duty to make our heavily trafficked roads that all of us use taken care of. But I think we've all acknowledged today that we don't have enough money to do most of anything that we're interested in doing. So therefore, we can't do it alone and we have to partner. So the policies have to create the best way to partner. And I go with Alan's idea. I live on a road that is not okay. My road could be turned to gravel, really, you know the road I live on. I haven't seen a road redo chip and seal since, I'm gonna go with 92 or 93 on my road. So I would be happy with a project that didn't make the road in front of my house look like the, King Midas's golden touch. Just a road that maybe I don't have to pick up and put in my dumpster every spring, right? Not a lot, not a lot. So I really like that idea because, policy wise, and again, I'm the new person here, so I'm picking up. But it sounds like we have set some standards for roads that, if we're going to make a road or work on a road and have a project with a road, it has to have this and that and this and that, or else we can't do it, right? So we're looking at a policy that gives us options on the requirements, for instance, the 5-foot shoulder that you had talked about. And we had talked about this with Bluff Road. So we're looking at kind of two things I hear, policies regarding the funding, but also maybe what the road's gonna look like. The road that would fix my subdivision is not the road that tons of cars would go on and trucks every day like Hammond, right? So me and my neighbors don't have to pay for a Hammond road, right? In our neighborhood. So we're looking at changing that, right? Right now, we have to build a road that's really super highway standards in our subdivisions. Is that what it is?
We've made some leeway too with that, with the low volume road
Okay,
guidelines.
Yeah.
okay. So do you think that's
We can
something we
adjust
have to
for it.
look at, a low volume road standard, or do you think
Yeah.
it's adequate what we do?
Your road is a 30-foot road. And-
Yes.
Yeah, and so, I mean,
The road's 30-foot, right?
Yes, would we have to bring it up to the standards if we did that?
If you're 30-foot, we try to stay within the existing footprint, or if it's like a 11-foot road, let's
Okay.
say but you got 50 houses on it, so we want to make that wider than a 1 lane road.
Okay. So those are the things I think about that people talk about. They care about the major roads in our county, but the most important one is the one out their front door.
Yep.
So we need a policy that, and I know I understand money doesn't fall from the sky, obviously, but we need to look at policies that at some way lessen the burden for being able to fix those little roads.
So that's a good segue to now to talk, if we're gonna focus on local roads, let's talk about a little about those. At the last presentation, we saw that the average PCI of our local roads, and those included, I believe, the subdivision roads, but they were all just paved roads, the 53.
I believe that was excluding the,
The subdivision,
65, I believe.
it's 65 with it,
without subs.
without subs, it's 65, with subs, it's 53. Is that what it is?
That's correct.
Okay, so my understanding was a little different. I thought it was without the subs, it was at 53.
So we had an amendment, and I think that's what, the first part was, it kind of had some different numbers because it was everything paved,
Right,
all pavement. right?
okay,
So then we started chopping it up into different families.
We're breaking into different sections,
We
the
pulled
primaries,
out-
the locals, the subs.
We even
can look
pulled
at
out
it.
the local through.
I'm sorry, just subdivisions all by themselves, do we have that number?
Yes.
I think that would give us the scope of what we're talking about. Okay.
I like for Joe to go with the township roads.
Language.
Give the townships to have some, stay back in the roads. And the reason that really resonates with me right now is, Bill and Larry both were down in a meeting downstate this week. And they're talking to other townships or other counties. They're talking to other townships. They bill them for everything. When they mow, they get billed for mowing their townships. And they go out and they patch, I believe. Anything they do in the township, they get billed to that.
Yeah, they have a lot of partnerships.
But that makes our township raise the taxes. I mean, everybody pays for it, whether
They
it's
have
in their
a
county
higher
or their.
Per capita, obviously downstate, but still, that's where they're getting their roads funded.
Oh,
so this is different, so this
Oh.
65 weighted average includes the primaries. So,
yeah.
that's the way I'm reading it.
Rows 53.
Local through individual is 53, 50, 54.
so
If you add
subdivisions
the,
look better than the local roads. Am I reading this right?
well, if you look at weighted, I think the average of all primary locals through local subdivisions is 65 because of the 84 for the primary.
Right.
That bumps it out. But if you take the primaries out,
Yeah.
just the local through and local subdivisions are going to be in the 50s.
50, 53, and
Right,
54.
right, yeah,
right.
65 is skewed by the 84 from the primary.
Can I get a refresher on what a local through specifically means? I think I'm getting confused.
So
Zimmerman.
we kind of built
Why
those.
isn't it a local?
We built those a long time, well, they were trying to figure out ways to get more money pumped into the local.
So right now, we've only spent 100% of our funding on the primaries. We were trying to find a way to spend 100% on local crews. Since townships don't want to match 50/50. And we know these are roads that are probably even have more traffic than some of our primary roads.
They're feeder roads, right?
Yeah.
They're
Local
feeder into the
crews.
primary.
So that's what we need more stuff to identify,
Yeah, that's-
how we identify.
A local through typically is primary to primary that's gonna have.
Like Zimmerman Road going from Silver Lake.
Yeah,
Whereas a local, Forest Lodge, I guess we'd call that a local. We just did that though.
Forest Lodge would be, not a subdivision.
I wouldn't call that a sub.
like straight road would be a local.
Phil just,
Straight road.
Phil
Okay.
just suggested Lafreniere.
That's actually a local.
That's a local.
It's not a local
Frankie
through,
Road.
even though it's going to like two
No.
Mather Road.
No, that's a local through.
That's a local
Because
through.
it's not a primary road right now. It's a local, but we know it's being used.
It's a through road.
Okay,
more
and then
like a
tell me a
primary.
primary,
So primary road
Yes.
is, yeah.
South Airport.
And then South Airport.
Would be your
The big-
primaries.
They're
And this is-
mostly federally
Garfield,
eligible.
probably.
Right, so the federal aid eligible is important, and we're talking about a high volume road. I'm assuming volume is part of your equation, okay? I sometimes get confused when they say local through and local. I don't really know what that means, and what does that mean to using terminology like township road? Is a local and a local through a township road? Both of them
They're
are,
all local.
Yes,
Same
They're
fund.
all-
those are township roads.
So township roads to me suggest that township, for me, it's, if you're gonna call it a township road, then it's a township road from a jurisdiction standpoint, so.
yeah, that's why.
I'm not, yeah, if you're gonna call something a township road, that's a township road, it's not a county road then.
So primary is
so-
federal eligible, but local through and local are
I
not.
get it.
Yeah,
Right?
I get your perspective.
yeah, that's,
I'm down with that.
We
Very-
can't
very
use
few
federal.
Local roads are the NFC.
So it would be hard for us to do work, say, on Lafreniere Road with federal aid.
No, we actually did.
So we can spend 50% of our MTL on that. So like you said, we have to identify. You can identify that through like the millage or other funding, but we can only spend 50%.
I'm glad that this is so simple for the average consumer to figure out.
absolutely, it just took me a year and a half to figure that out.
Like,
But look, I think if we are talking about priorities, in terms of the local roads, because now we are focusing our discussion on local roads because we thought that should be our emphasis. Local throughs, which are pretty much high volume locals that we have been talking about. I think the other alternative term would be high volume locals, which is what Jason was referring to.
Yeah.
Right now, their PCI is, a weighted PCI is 53. So opening it up for discussion, carrying on from the special meeting, where do we want to see that those local throughs? And do we want, I think the discussion should be, where should that PCI be in terms of that quality? Because 53, if I'm not mistaken, where does it, it's like fair or is it poor?
And the PCI.
Poor, right?
It's starting to get there.
It's on the high end of the poor and low end of the fair.
It's starting to get there, yeah. And we do have, so what I had them do was I said, well, what would it take us to raise our local road network, our rating up to a 65? You know?
Okay,
So that's what I was trying to figure out, and obviously the money is, significant. But what I was trying to do was maintain our primaries, obviously, but also look at those local throughs and try to increase those to a satisfaction, or even a 65, which is our current.
yeah, so if you look at it, it's really at the poor side. It's not even
Yes.
in the fair because it's 53.
Yeah, so if we have a limited number of money, a limited amount of money. And there's no magic fix. If the money's gonna come from somewhere, it's gonna have to come from the money we spend on our primary
Right.
roads.
That's correct.
And what you're asking or want to discuss is what will we accept?
Yes.
What loss will we accept on our primary?
Yes.
in order to improve our,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's at 84. Do we need to be at 84?
Yeah.
It's even in excess of the 80, which is the CRA guideline. And I have no idea of how old that guideline is or how it was developed.
it will buy us some time that we can use some money to creep down to 80 or 76. The point is when we're telling the staff what projects to go, they'll say, well, you know, we really need to finish Hammond. There's this last section that really stinks. And we're going to say, nah, it averages in. We're willing to live with that getting a little worse while we fix whatever local road.
And keep in mind, based upon the presentation at the last meeting, if we keep spending what we are spending on our roads, primary, local throughs, that TCI is going to decrease.
Yeah.
So we are not necessarily saying we are asking whether we should actually decrease the spending on primaries, but keep in mind that even if we don't, and we keep it as it is. So if we keep those 20 those local roads that are at 20 or 23, if we keep just doing what we are doing, that's going to keep getting worse. And the primary is going to keep getting worse.
Well,
So we are in a catch-22 here.
That's where I'm
Yeah.
struggling.
take the bottom off. But
But if we allow the top to lessen, let's just say, we make a absolute concerted effort to do that. There's the part two, which is how do you leverage the dollars we're recouping by not doing the larger primary projects? How do we take those dollars and leverage them best to partner? Because we already know we can't do it in a silo. We don't have the money. So those policies of how you partner are to me, what's critical in this. How do we entice a partnership and make it look better? Like Alan said, you would feel more comfortable with certain numbers going to your neighbors than other numbers, right? I would too. I agree with you. And I think that's the key to the SAD, honestly. So how do you leverage it better? I don't have the answer to that, by the way.
Well, and we have that, we're not even talking about the SADs right now. We're talking about those local through roads and how can we get the townships to, because based upon our current funding levels, what was the time frame over which those would decrease, 4 years?
So, the local throughs, we were at 54 and in 4 years we'll be down to a 44 at do nothing.
And where would the primaries be in that time frame? From 84 to what?
Let's see, primaries, this would be an 84 to 75.
Right.
4 years.
In 4 years, if we keep doing what we are doing right now.
Well,
So if we take money away from the primaries, do the math, it's gonna go, it's gonna go faster to 75.
And that's the problem, whereas we go from 75 cents a square yard to $9 a square yard in that time period on those primaries.
And we set goals, and obviously those are gonna be steep, but I'm just looking at this up here, what if you drop it by 10? Your primaries, your goals 80, your locals are 70, or your local crews, then you just keep going down.
Say that again?
Go down, kind yes,
74.
PPI to each one, make your new goal, your goal primary is 80, your local throughs are 70, your locals are 60.
I see what you're saying.
And then your subdivisions are there.
Oh,
They are, yeah.
Yeah, but
But I get you,
but based on your own data, going it down to 80 is gonna make it go down to what, maybe 64 or about 70 within the next 4 years rather than at 75.
So we set these goals and we have to start providing.
Yeah, and then we can't
Partners to match and fund, and this is what we can go out and say, this is our goal to get these roads to here, this is our shortfall. Let's get there.
And then we'll have to start taking the money back and start spending a lot more money on the primaries to bring them up to.
what I think, we clearly see that the local through roads stink.
Yes,
Mhm.
I think we should identify the local through roads that we would like to improve the most.
Yes.
I think you hinted at this last month.
Yeah.
And now we put a project on those. We say, okay, this is what it'll cost. And we focus on one per township, the top 10 with the highest traffic counts.
yes.
And we find a way to get those done. if we can find a partner, we get
Great.
those done.
Yeah, that really is
Because people
what,
need a name. I'm gonna bring back, there's nobody in here from Five Lake, is there?
yeah.
Are you the Lake Shore Drive guys?
am.
Okay. The original
Really,
mineral, because I've been harping about this since I've been on the board. The board promised those guys they were gonna fix their road, but they were not gonna reconstruct it. They were gonna chip seal it. And they didn't do the chip seal. And so I think we've had an egg on our face all the time. And because they, in the end, they said chip seal's not gonna fix it. We made a mistake.
Okay.
But when you identify a project and you follow through, about 9 out of 10 of the other projects that they identified, they did follow through on the, because people understood them and took ownership of them and voted yes for the millage the first time. Because they said, oh, that's gonna be my road. And they identified that I will vote for that. Everybody in the county sitting down and looking at saying, well, I'll give you guys more money because I don't like the through locals and your weighted average is too low and we'll give you another 1/10 of a mil and we'll vote for that. But no, if it's X road and I know that's really important to me, I'll go to my township meeting and I'll harangue them too. And we'll get that road fixed. So I think our procedure should be identify the worst of these nasty things and go attack.
I agree. My original idea was on the local throughs, use it in terms of the criteria of the condition of that road and the traffic volume. And then either approach the township, see if we can partner, but if they don't, we need to be willing to go beyond the 50% that we are limited to and then find the source of funding.
How about if our funding is so limited, we make the list of these 10 roads and we're gonna do the ones that we can find a partner for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like that.
And if we can't find, if Lakeshore Drive can't find a partner, we're not gonna do it.
But going back to the
But if we can,
crushing. You know,
Oh, the crushing shape.
get to that, yeah,
we have to let the engineering decide, like you wouldn't double chip seal Lakeshore Drive. It needs to be a paved road.
No, I would literally take anything. Like if anything
her
came
subdivision,
before me for my
Well,
stuff.
but, you know, when I was paving, I'll talk to you very soon. In Benzie County, they had a bunch of roads. They had a bunch of roads were really poor. And we wedged over a lot of roads that an engineer would say, kind of a waste of money. 9 out of 10 of those are pretty good.
but it works. though.
It kind of works in it. So that was 12 years ago. And if we went on a road tour, you would say 80% of them are still pretty good today because we got lucky. Sometimes you have bad soils. The road.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have bad soils and it doesn't work.
And I preface my next comments by saying that this is certainly not any sort of type of disrespect towards the engineering department. Okay, you guys do a wonderful
We're just the
job.
number of people.
But my experience being on this board now has been that we are too boxed in when we come to these solutions for these roads. They have to be done this certain way, and it has to be done this way, and there is no other way. So what you're talking about, if a road can be made, it could be improved by less than a crush and shape, like a wedge and whatever those terms are, or chip and seal. Let's do it that way, rather than being rigid in terms of, no, this is the only way we're gonna address this road because there's no other solution. And I think that way of thinking needs to change a little.
Somebody over here a few years ago, overlaid Silver Pines. I live over on that side of town. Silver Pines really wasn't a great candidate for an overlay, but it was such a bad road and there was no money for it. They overlaid it and it's pretty drivable now.
I was actually really excited about that one and wished we could have gotten something like that.
So,
It's the policy that the board can say, yeah, it's not the perfect choice, but we'll accept that.
Oh, do we need that as a policy, or is it, that's my point, is like, I don't want to get into micromanaging every single thing in terms of, well, this is, because it's not a policy right now. It's a practice that was developed by the engineering department that this is how we are going to do roads, right? I mean,
There are standards that he has to adhere to. There are minimums and standards he has to adhere to. There may be exceptions based on board action though. So.
Here's,
well, I'll let the engineer talk.
Yeah.
One way I'm kind of looking at it is, why did we get so stringent with our policies? Why did past boards look at this? It's because at some point it was okay to go do a double chip or a triple chip. And that's why our roads in the condition they are now. So if we do this, what are we doing buying 10 years? And the board down the road says, what the heck did they do? They just set us up again. I mean, we could make people happy. And I don't disagree. We've got to find a happy medium. But I think we have to be careful.
But to address that,
We might have went too far. We got to find a medium. maybe.
Yeah.
to address that, I think for the most part, we need to have the higher standards, particularly in our primaries. But we also need to preserve those primaries. And frankly, I'm as big an advocate of preservation. And if all we had was the money just to preserve our primaries and high volume locals, I'm good at going there and letting the other roads fall apart. Okay. Because once those primaries go bad,
We're done.
we're behind the 8 ball too much. It doesn't even matter what we do at that point. So insofar as the subdivisions, hey man, I'm all for that. Crush it down into dirt and then lay a coat of chip.
I don't feel like Alan said that,
Well,
actually.
My point is, I was looking at a solution, and it was what people could afford. If there's something that we can do that somebody can afford in these subdivisions, that's great. But these primaries and these high volume locals, we have to maintain them. And right now, preservation is our best policy, period.
And the problem, I agree with you. The thing is that when it comes to high volume locals, it's not even being preserved. The primaries are,
Yeah.
but the high volume locals are not.
The high volume
So-
locals are dogs.
They are.
Well, we
they're
already
not preserved.
talked about
We're getting there.
prioritizing that. My point was, the SAD is still a part of our assets. We still are better off when neighbors join together as partners with us and we improve a road in any way. It just won't be improved in the way that Hammond or Lafreniere are the ones that all the cars drive on. But I think people know that their subdivision road is never gonna be done. If you wait for your number, it's like you could win a lotto before you get your road done, right? So if your options are, maybe it's not, this absolute great road, but you have an option to do it, why can't we offer that? That's not talking about to the detriment of our primary roads and local roads, just offering different options. And if the property owners and the neighbors aren't into it, then they can just be like, thanks, no thanks. But it's really, that's the most common question we get is people about the road that they live on. And we give them this SAD option and then they look at it and it's like 10 grand and I don't have that. So what do? That's important, I think. And then I have a very dumb question. Do businesses ever join together like SADs and contribute as partners with us on?
Blue Star. That's all
Okay.
businesses. There's only one resident.
all businesses.
One residence on Blue Star.
So when we say the SAD policy in subdivisions, we don't
Yeah.
really mean necessarily residential property.
No,
Those are
not
all
necessarily.
businesses.
There could be PUDs, there could be other types of development.
But they can't be businesses that are located on roads on that list on a local through
Right.
or a
Well,
local.
no, they are local, aren't they? They're part of a local network.
What
Are
was
those like
what was the question?
Blue Star Drive?
What if all the housing projects on Lafreniere Road got together in an SAD? And they partner to improve a road that's a local through a bigger, higher volume than a
I mean,
subdivision?
like all these apartments?
Yes, 100%.
Whoever owns the development.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think there's
Can
any
you do that?
restriction on that.
Yeah.
No, they can do it. If you can set up if.
Yeah, they own the property.
Yeah.
So it
They could be
doesn't have
assessed.
to be a subdivision,
No.
right, that where it says subdivision. It could be any of those roads and it's a group of property owners on there.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be our, it can be.
Who benefit from the road.
Yeah.
And you can get together
Yep.
and you can partner with us
Yeah.
on roads,
Yeah.
right?
You can help us widen.
I do want to give Derek an opportunity to respond to a little bit of the discussion that's had about the standards and you know, the flexibility.
Yeah, just touch on the SAD real quick. We kind of use SAD as a tool for roads that they go to your house and that's the only place they go. If you have through traffic on there as well, you're paying for somebody else to use your road as a through. That's kind of why the SADs are
Right.
good for some. But as far as like width standards, yes, we are bound by our current geometric standards or development standards. We've kind of worked, me and Wayne have kind of worked with Joe or Alan and Jason regarding tailoring that more to like our SADs to get them a better price. I mean, if you have a 22-foot wide road and you only have 3 houses on it, I think that's sufficient. I mean, that's kind of guidelines that are set up by AASHTO through the low volume roads that we can kind of adopt as kind of a footnote to that current cross section we have set up.
Our policy doesn't say that, but he can use now, if we're willing to let him, the AASHTO guidelines. This is what we did when you looked at Jefferson, right? Jefferson,
No,
that we didn't do.
Hampshire.
Oh, because they were narrower in the one area.
Yeah.
And you figured out something that said in this, according to this design and this traffic count and so on, this would be acceptable. We don't want to go out anything outside the guidelines of
Right.
AASHTO.
of AASHTO, but the Grand Traverse Road Commission doesn't say, look at AASHTO. It says 32-foot paved 3.5 inches, 2-foot shoulders.
Okay.
So all we have to do is say, well, what do we accept? And then in every case, unfortunately, somebody in engineering is gonna have to look at it, go out there and say, yeah, that makes sense. And here's page 32 of this guideline that allows me to do that.
So
Our current standard is basically a primary road. That's one standard we have. So,
right, and that's what was my understanding, that we treat all our roads as a primary roads, and that doesn't make sense to me.
No.
You know, and I'm gonna ask this just because they actually are guidelines. Are they mandatory?
yes.
Okay, so do we have standards?
They're guidelines in the sense that there's, a maximum and you want to stay in that.
Sure.
in that area.
So to the extent that the road commission has standards that exceed those, do we have road standards at the road commission level that exceed those guidelines?
Oh, without my book and I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay,
I would doubt it. I would say we're probably within that range.
I ordered once the AASHTO book for shared use bike paths. And it was
Terrible.
230 pages.
right.
It's all dependent on volume.
I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
of consideration.
There's a whole.
The reason I'm asking is because of the comment that Commissioner Lehman made about that there are certain standards that we require that every road has to be at like 32 feet and with 5 feet shoulders. And I'm trying to figure out if there's a policy like that, and if that policy exceeds an AASHTO guideline, then why have those? Why have those standards? Why not just have a standalone policy that says all our roads are gonna meet AASHTO guidelines and that's it, leave it at that?
That's a way to go. I mean,
Right.
We might want certain of our roads they're gonna be within the guidelines. But as a board, we might want to direct the fact that they're at the upper end, because some of the commissioners especially, I can remember a few years back, our primary roads were terrible too. And about 10 years ago or something, Jason, about when you got on the board, the primary roads got better.
Mhm.
And the worst one, South Airport, they bonded South Airport and got South Airport done. Was not anything, was it within the scope of what the road commission could afford, but it's the most important. You can argue with me, but it's the most important primary road in our county.
It is.
And they focused on it and got it done. And
Big projects.
that was a huge project. And it got paid off, and that was really important. So I think I like the 84s, and I hope we don't get much worse. And
So what you're after is the policy is
I want,
We will not exceed AASHTO standards unless
I will.
approved by the board.
Yeah, unless
Unless press-
approved by the board. Yeah, if we can do it
That's-
by a motion today. That if we can simply pass a motion that says that all our roads are going to meet the AASHTO guidelines unless
exceed.
otherwise approved by the board. And that's our policy.
Existing roads?
Not to exceed.
Yeah, existing roads and future roads.
Well,
New roads, you might want to build to the high standard.
Yeah.
New road, you want
You
to,
want to-
we don't want
have
those
problems
developers.
down the road.
yeah.
You want to beat up those
I don't
developers.
think
and
it's a
make
one,
sure-
I don't think it's a one size fits all.
Yeah, I think you need to work on the policy a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit more, but it's not to exceed.
It's, you're close, but it's not ready for prime time right now.
But what we want to do though is there are certain local roads that we as board members are dissatisfied with, let alone the public. And if we want to address those, we should get a list of those that are the most disappointing. And come up with a way to fix them
With target dates.
with target dates, sure, and find out what we can partner with on that road. And if we can't get a partner for now, that road might have to wait. But if we can, that's where we focus the money we have.
So I think the staff would appreciate a little bit more guideline other than local roads that are disappointing. You might want to like establish like a ranking, is it like are they failing, are they super failing?
One thing real quick, we're trying to hit hard on this trans map and the overall keeping the PCI on. This is getting back to a little bit of picking roads, so. I gotta get both sides of it, but we've
Can we
got
look at the trans map and have
See
you
what
guys
trans map.
tell us what you're disappointed in?
Oh,
Can you share that with us?
Well,
that's
that's
gonna
kind of
affect
what
our overall
we're-
PCI if we start picking
Again,
the roads, but if we're going after, I don't know, it's just a choice. You gotta say that, all right, we're focusing on making.
Well,
our
but
local streets go up.
there are gonna be 20 roads that all have an equal PCI score.
Yes.
Correct.
But then we go into traffic volumes, then that's the second
Yeah,
criteria.
correct.
Okay, and now we got that down to 9. And we have enough money for 3.
And then we look at how many people are complaining about
No,
it.
let's go find
Partners,
them.
right.
We took this
Yeah,
20
I
to
get it.
9,
Yeah.
and now we can fund 3,
Right.
so let's fix the roads that we can fund.
I mean, that's how we go. We go with PCI volumes and then
But
we have not,
we have not really tried hard to find partners, I don't think. Well, I mean, you tell Garfield Township, we'll do this road if you can do it.
Mhm.
And they're gonna say yes or no. There's 5 trustees sitting up there or 7. They're gonna decide if that's important to the people in Garfield Township to spend their money on.
I told you this part of a bigger issue that we have in Grand Traverse County is that townships believe the roads are 100% road conditions. How do we change that?
You guys have talked about it, but state law says
it
there
is, well, but it's a lot of it's fungible. We can talk about state law and everything. And where our village money goes, but we ultimately decide to spend money in a building, in Kingsley or whether we go after a particular road because it's a safety issue, whether or not it's covered under the Act 51 monies in exactly the way that it's gonna be. We still make decisions and there's money that if we didn't spend it here, it could be spent there. It's all fungible to some extent. So.
so in order to move this discussion forward, can we have do we want to have a discussion as to what that standard would be for local roads in order for staff to come up with a list? What are we talking about? What PCI? Are we going by PCI? Are we going by what that other map showed that failing roads wherever that's.
what do you guys want to use?
So what we kind of did was, to achieve, let's go with the local throughs. Right now, we're talking about 120 miles, right? That we deemed local throughs. In the next 4 years to take our 54 up to a 65 is gonna cost about $6.5 million per year. Just in our local through network.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, from what number to what number? Did you say?
54, well, our local throughs right now, our PCI, I'm sorry, 59, sorry.
Okay,
59 to.
I couldn't follow that. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, I'm just telling you, that's a.
But I think going with what Alan is saying is, okay, so we identify the worst of those.
Yeah.
And we get them to a standard where we can preserve them. I mean, just like we're preserving our primary roads
Yeah.
right now.
Correct.
And, you know, I think that then participation, if we can get a 50% participation, we get a 30% participation, it takes a $6 million number down significantly.
That's
$6 million, $4 million at 30%.
Right,
Exactly. And we might be able to afford 4 million.
Yep.
And we're working on that, weekly. We're trying to come up with numbers and we're trying to come up with, find those particular. Things like Derek's saying, let's go to a school, let's go to a hospital, that's kind of the asset management kind of realm of things. And again, I think there should be parts of it that should be in that preservation world. If we find one of these locals that are in good shape, local news that are in good shape, let's try to get that preservation.
Right.
Because that's cheap money. or
That's cheap.
Where those reconstructs, we're only gonna get a little bit of road built because it's so expensive. Preservation, I can go miles, like we did 70, 80 miles of chip seal this year.
That's all.
We can do that because it's cheaper and we get miles of road done. So it's a mix of fixes that we really need to dive into it. And I think it's just a matter of, again, those local crews having enough or having some allocation. at
So
all.
one idea would be for the local crews would be that you are looking at the local crews that if improved, if we can, would have the biggest impact on the overall PCI rating, right? So because I think the other part of the discussion was, I think it came from Dan, is the concern that if we are picking and choosing some of these local through roads, are we doing it at the expense of the other roads, which may be in a fair condition, but now because funds are being diverted to these other high volume and low PCI local through roads, that in the end, the net effect may not be anything
Mhm.
in terms of a change. It may still stay at 54 or may even fall because then other roads have deteriorated. So one suggestion from me would be that we look at the local road through roads that would have the most impact on improving that number, traffic volume, and then finding a partner for that road. I just want this board to give them the staff some guidance rather than having just
Well,
conceptual discussions. on
so,
this topic.
so if 90% of the roads, of the local roads, I'm just blanking them all into there. If 90% of them, are never used, I'm just gonna say there's zero traffic, and then 10% of it, and we just let them fall to 40. So you can say, oh, those roads, we need to get them up to get the average up. I'm gonna go for the 10% and get the most effect for residents. So you can't just say, I wanna follow a strategy that just chases up the local roads PCI average. I don't wanna do that. I want our people to do what they do best and consider what local roads have the highest traffic counts and what local roads do our drivers in the county see most often. I don't care if about the PCI at the end, if we can make it better for many more percent of our, much more percentage of our population. So be careful when we talking about the PCI number alone. I mean, yeah, we can tout a high PCI number, but if it doesn't make as much sense, then getting the roads that are really most important to the people.
But that's how we have treated the primary roads. We have keep touting the number 84,
Well,
84, 84.
We've just gotten them there.
So-
84 is a high
So we
percentage.
can't just have one standard for the primaries and a different standard for the local.
But are you saying, well, we have 112 miles,
120, yeah.
120,
Through.
take the start at, I'm just picking up 25% of the roads that have the most traffic, identify those. And then look at those roads, the roads with the most traffic, and see, okay, what's the condition of those roads? Let's define this down a little further. Because this is the ones that everybody's really going to see. Even though we have 120 miles, some of these only have 200 cars a day, but a lot of these have 1100.
Yeah.
So when we get to that 25%, now we'll say, oh, these roads we could really improve, but they have 75% of the traffic on them. 25% of the roads or something to that effect. Now we'll say, okay, let's improve those roads.
So you're talking about the top 25 most traveled local through roads.
Yeah, you could pick 15 or 30, I wouldn't.
Right, I'm trying to figure out where the
Yeah.
number, like if there's an actual,
It's up to this level, then you get on the next level.
yeah. Or we can just rank all those roads by the most to the, up to a certain traffic number. What's considered high volume traffic? Is there a number that you guys rely upon in your
2,000 to 3,000, that's pretty good.
2,000 to 3,000?
Something I was kind of hoping the board could also establish, so that's what we.
Agree.
That's probably what is probably more feasible, is to say, give us the list of roads that have this traffic count.
Okay.
So if 2,000 to 3,000 is considered, let's go with 2,000. Or,
I had 2,500 in my head, or Derek even said that.
well, that's.
Okay,
that's
so
an even number.
you're gonna get that list, if you're above. You've got 100, Larry said that we have 120 miles. How many of those miles are above 2,500? Is that our
25 and above, yep, 25 and above.
2,500 and above, if that's high above? Okay, what of those roads, how many need help?
Yep.
Okay, then we're gonna say, okay, now we got this down even further, because we're gonna get more people are gonna use this for everything. Now we're gonna get the list of these roads, and you're gonna give us a list, you're gonna have a list. Doesn't matter what, if it's road A or road B. Now we gotta find out where we can get the money from for those roads.
That's a start, absolutely. I think that's a good start. Let's start from there. At least it gives us an idea as to what we're looking at. And it gives you guys, and then we can, actually start.
I don't want to sound like recycling again, but when I get a complaint about a road, it is almost always a subdivision. So I'm gonna go back to, is there validity? That's a road, then how many failed roads do we have? Or failing roads that are in that category?
I have to look,
Is there,
but there's some.
am I illogical in my thought that we come up with a different way to fix those roads? If the people on the roads are willing to do an option like we're talking about to get their road. I know it's a 15-year short-term fix, but
It's not, you can go look at these subdivisions that were done in 1980.
I know.
It's 44 years later, it's still
Yeah.
serviceable.
Well, I mean, I'm just, whatever, but I'm just saying, if I get a complaint, yeah, I get a few on the true locals, but if I get a complaint, it's about a subdivision and or the cost of the SAD.
Yes.
Aren't those subdivision roads subject to the ASHTO guidelines too? Or no?
Yeah, they would still be, I mean, that's, when we talk about the low volume roads.
Yeah,
And that's where I think we would be talking about using the ASHTO minimums. I mean, is,
right.
you say, hey, maybe for those subdivisions.
I think that we can simultaneously attack the high volume roads that are important to maintaining our infrastructure, but we can also listen to the people that we hear from, that we represent, that see the road outside their house. It affects the value of their home. For most people, the single biggest asset they have is their home. And we could come up with a better system. Just a system where it's not going to be the Taj Mahal of roads. I live in a cul-de-sac subdivision. I in no way think the taxpayers all across the county should be paying to fix that road. But the option we had was insanely expensive for most of our neighbors, and they just couldn't do it. What if it was just an option that was like a little bit less, that maybe isn't the perfect road? Can we do both of these things at the same time, or do we have to just completely focus on high volume?
No, we
roads?
can do both, but I guess I have a question for the staff here, because I'm getting, at least in my, maybe I'm misunderstanding it. I thought, I asked the question whether we have any standards right now that exceed ASHTO standards, and it was like, no. So why are we talking about subdivision roads that are being built to a different standard if we don't have a different standard at the road commission for those roads? I thought all our roads were being built according to ASHTO's guidelines, which we have to build. So help me clarify that misunderstanding, because I'm hearing two or three different answers to a question.
I'm not following.
The range.
The Commissioner Corn is under the impression that somehow when we are going out to build subdivision roads, we are asking these roads to be built to a higher standard than they need to be built. And my understanding, when I asked that question, if we have different standards that exceed ASHTO guidelines,
The standard is right now, currently our one cross section we have. That's the standard.
It exceeds the minimum.
so which is the primary
Or a
standard.
subdivision.
Yeah.
So we as a board can direct you to say, no, don't use that same standard, primary standard on.
That's what we've talked about.
Hampshire is
The low volume standard.
Hampshire is a perfect example. We came in at a very high cost. We met with the construction committee and they agreed to what they thought would be willing to go down to, which was less than what maybe we called for in our standard. And we took that back to them and they actually, I just heard from them that passed by 60%.
So we're gonna get that done.
We're gonna be seeing that one come through. It's at the township right now, but they got 60% full.
Who established that one primary road standard? Was it a
I think
previous
it's
board?
2016, I think was the last time they were,
Was it by board action?
I would assume so.
You guys have?
I was here, I was in 2017, I
Okay.
think.
I'm guessing off of like, where did that 80% come from? It came from CRA versus based off
Okay,
the state.
I'm fair now. So, okay, so that's the thing that you guys are gonna talk about to come up with this kind of, all right. Okay, any other discussion? But to your point, no, we can do both at the same time.
So I want to look, so we're saying 2,500 cars of a busy road, we want
Yep.
to make this standard. We want to put a number on, hey, we'll look at this being less and maybe we can go back to gravel if it's under this amount of cars per day.
Well, let's just first go with,
Yeah,
let's
let's not
tackle
jump
it,
there.
yeah, let's not give, let's just go with the list that you guys come up with for those roads
Well, I
and
was
let's
wondering,
focus.
like the other commissioner was saying, we want to focus on the subdivisions. Is there an example of what we would say that's okay to now? Take that back to gravel or to go to a lower standard so that we have those.
I am not sure how many subdivision owners would want subdivision.
Yeah,
people.
I think they'd have to make the decision whether or not they wanna live with a crappy pothole filled road.
Right,
Or gravel.
Yeah.
I mean, let that
They have
happen
to
and,
decide it.
yeah.
they will have to decide it.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure that we have less than that primary road standard.
Yeah.
The comment
Being applied. I think that.
the roadside into the waste bin.
Every single spring,
Yeah,
I
those-
push the
those
dumpster
edges,
down
man.
and I pick it up and put it in and it
Yeah.
keeps going back every year.
But I'm pretty sure Commissioner Kwan will not want that road to be a gravel road.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, so that's, yeah.
But we need to be able to have a better answer when we answer, 'cause I genuinely hear this the most. When the answer is, well, it's this partnership called an FAD and you partner with your township and you guys have to help pay for it and it's on your tax bill. We're losing them with every word, right? And then they finally are like, okay, we'll do that. And they collect the signatures and they get the estimate and they're like, wait, what? It's like $10,000. Yeah.
I've got a couple of people. like that.
So like, what if we just had some different options?
Yeah.
Is all I'm
I
saying.
know we have talked about chip seals and subdivisions before, and the first thing is, well, I can't rollerblade on a chip sealed road, or I
Well,
can't.
Okay,
uh,
but
So
that's
they don't
fine.
wanna do it.
Then-
So I'm just saying, we have thrown other options out there, and it usually comes back.
They can do it after a while.
But when you go and get your kitchen remodel done, they'll give you like a quote for a Formica countertop and a granite countertop. I feel like all we get is the granite countertop option as subdivision dwellers.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah,
Let's like
like,
try to make the road blast, so you're not paying your SAD, the road's already back to garbage.
look, I know the granite's not gonna have as high a value on my house in the long run, and it might get burns on it and might not last as long, but it's a functioning countertop for me and my family, and it still has some value to my asset. The road that's deteriorating rapidly in front of my house is lowering my home value every year. So I would rather have a Formica countertop in my kitchen than nothing at all.
All right.
So.
For the building committee, just to get a time frame as to what's your time frame as to when you could have something.
We
to
will
us?
meet again and discuss this before our next board meeting. And it should be
Awesome.
a continuing.
Oh, this will be.
Because what we give you is gonna come back to you to look at policy.
Yes.
You're gonna say, why?
Well, and I'd rather have that at the board discussion, and then we can do policy committee, but at least something You wanted to say something?
I was just gonna make a joke that I'm more than willing to live on a gravel road, but unfortunately I live on a
Yeah.
primary road.
Well, good discussion. I think do you have any clarification questions before we move on? Are you clear on what we are asking?
I think we got a good starting point to
Good.
breaking the subcommittees.
Okay, awesome. Moving on, retirement system annual report form.
Yeah, this didn't require any action. We just had to submit it to the board. I'm gonna turn it into the state, tomorrow. We're 80% funded on the closed defined contribution or defined benefit plan we have. Retirees are only one current deferred, person in that plan. Once you turn 60, then you'll get pension payments. On the healthcare, we pay as you go. We don't have an OPEB set up. We're under $100,000 a year. Can't remember the exact amount. So we'll trigger underfunded. I'll ask for a waiver. We'll get it approved. We just got the waiver approval from last year,
I was gonna
about a
say,
week or two ago. And,
have we done it right in the last year?
Is that the 5% or?
so when they, Public Act 202
Right.
wanted, local governments to have, 60%, funded on their, pension plans, and I think 40% funded on their, OPEB, so
Okay.
retiree healthcare. plans.
And because we do a pay as you go, it doesn't, you can't answer it that way.
Also,
Yeah.
and for the general public, the reason we don't have it fully funded is because it doesn't make economic sense, correct?
Well, it's well within our
Yeah.
annual budget, and we're gonna provide for it, and I forget the average age of
Right.
the group of people, but you know, every year they age, and some age off. And
It's out there.
it's
We try to
it'll
understand
continue to
that
reduce.
situation like the county had. It's
No, we were like 19 now.
Yeah.
We're 37%.
I think when I calculated the annual required contribution was something like $26,000 a year if we were to fund it. So
But we don't defer our contribution. We don't just not make the payments.
we pay them to MERS every single month.
Correct. Okay. So the county deferred for 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how you make that happen.
it's not.
So, yeah, no action, just
No action? All
part
right.
of the requirements.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Moving on, manager's comments, elevator update. That's very
It's a big
thrilling.
part
I
of
can't
that.
wait to hear a
Yes.
presentation.
So the state has changed the law on what they require for elevators. And it has to do with the locking system, my
I know.
understanding. Yeah. So in order to upgrade our elevator, just to stay within code, we're at 33,000.
It's terrible.
But something we've actually had on our radar for about the last year or two is, you know, what do we need to replace this elevator? And the reason we look at that is it's so old now, it's not supported. So we're looking at overall is about $88,000 to upgrade the elevator overall so that we can actually get replacement parts, stuff like that. So if our elevator was to break today, we can't get replacement parts.
Are we required to have an elevator?
That is something I've been researching.
I didn't know this building had an elevator.
Yeah, it's.
Did you, okay, well, I was like, okay,
Anyway,
okay.
So that's something I've been researching because we do have, it's a walkout basement, so we do have that. We
Right.
do have a bathroom downstairs. we have a
Yeah,
bathroom
ADA
upstairs.
probably, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but it's a walkout basement.
so we do have access in a
Yeah.
bathroom, so we're trying to figure, if you have both of those, are you required by?
You are
that?
not.
So,
if
You
we're
are not by
not,
the
then
ADA.
let's fill it in.
I would have to.
Make
look
a-
at
make an
the
office out of it.
Requirements, but I don't believe you are required. It's not until the building gets 4 stories.
Get that out.
Who's gonna get the elevator up? You know, it's not gonna be an elevator.
And I don't want it downstairs, so I.
That's like big
I
liability.
should have a hard time finding it in the state.
No.
I don't believe you are.
Wouldn't like an architect or some,
I think we might have to reach out. I've been doing.
Why don't you call
So-
Carl Stasinski at?
well, the Grand Rivers Construction, call them. Oh, yeah.
According to the schedule,
Yeah,
to
he's brilliant.
decommission it, it's a $460 permit, so let's
Yeah.
pay the $460, lock the door or turn it into an office, you know.
I don't think you need one here. It's a walkout basement. You could build an
Yeah.
appropriate graded ramp to. I don't.
And
think
we
you
have
need one.
stairs
And that's
too.
only for fire reasons.
How long have we had the elevator? Forever?
This is 25 years old.
Oh, so we have always had a walkout basement as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, something to look at.
Okay.
All right, any,
Super expensive to upgrade the elevators.
Yeah,
It's really
$88,000 is a
building.
lot of road, I'm sorry, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of chip seal anyway.
okay,
One of everybody's, for 25, we'll be talking budget here pretty soon. A couple other updates, it's the holiday season here coming up, obviously before. So our hours next week, we will be here Monday, Tuesday, and we're bringing Wednesday will be our half day versus Friday.
Okay.
Friday will be, Thursday, Friday will be our holiday,
okay.
so, Monday, Tuesday, full days, Wednesday will be our half day.
We're not parading this year, right?
We are the parade next
Oh, you
Saturday.
We are parading.
Oh, okay, okay. What are we taking this time?
The elevator.
Are we taking that old,
Yep.
the same
Studebaker, we have chairs in front.
nice?
We,
You want us to be there?
yeah, so to say, anybody that wants to come.
What time is the parade?
I've been to the parade for the last 5 or 6 years, so if somebody else can go this year.
10:30 start parade.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot of fun. That's,
They said they'd let us know a week before and we still have not received.
Well, let us send an email to all the
I would
commissioners.
say roughly, I think they said 11 o'clock is start time,
Okay.
so if we want some line.
I'm going to be there in the morning.
Did you throw candy, Jeff?
No, we didn't throw candy.
no.
We're not throwing any candy, are we?
Yeah, I don't think you're allowed.
I don't think-
No, I don't think, yeah. I'll be there in the morning, but, I mean, because I'm running there, but I'll probably just be all.
Which is a bummer. I always wanted to fill up one of those trucks with candy and then turn the sander on when we go down.
Yeah, let's not do that, you know. That's great, yeah. We might have to update our budget on the municipality bias coverage. All those road discussions. All right, so that's good. If you could send an email when you find the time, for the, so just to the commissioners and so that those of us who want to attend.
I had another note to talk about the raised grant we already did. I did forward that link to everyone.
Mhm,
It
okay,
talks about it a little bit to your email. So you can read
Yeah, I
it.
was just reading about it on here.
all right. Anything else?
That's it.
They were creating non-motorized trails with the roads and that was just.
All right, commissioners' comments, questions, and future agenda items. I'll start with you. Nothing?
Just the choice between the granite and the Formica.
Okay.
I'm fine.
A quick question, are we moving forward or thinking about taking, Goodrick Road since it aligns with, the Cedar at the light and everything and changing the primary road from Tilton to Goodrick? Because I mean, I'm going from Cedar, I mean, it'll add like 300 yards or something, I mean, in terms of actual length, but.
I know the conversations came up. We're very interested in that. It came up at the MPO meetings several
Okay.
times. Leland County's talked to us quite a few times. I
It
think
would just make sense.
It
It
makes
just line
sense
with
on
their
our end.
primary roads.
it's something we would be very interested in.
Okay.
doing. So,
One thing that I want to ask the board, for the August meeting, our August meeting is on August 22nd, Thursday. I have a conflict. Can we, does anyone have any objection changing it to August 21st, the Wednesday?
What about August 29th?
I'm out of the country.
Oh,
That's like the third time this year.
That's sketchy-ish.
Okay, wait a minute, wait a minute. Okay, did you get recruited?
We don't talk about the Fight Club. So that would be my only request if we could change the meeting date for August from 22nd to the.
I don't have a problem with that.
Oh, on Wednesday.
Yeah, on Wednesday. Okay,
Wednesday's my open day?
do we need a motion for that?
No.
No.
All right, okay.
I'm
So
good.
if we, so the next for August, the meeting will be on Wednesday, August 21st. So please make a note on that. And to the staff, if you can, there's no special meeting in July, I believe, right? We are doing it every other month. I think we're doing it every other month.
Yep.
So then the meeting, there will be an August meeting.
I'm not sure why, but I have the 21st and the 22nd off.
Oh, you were not here on the regular day meeting anyway. So it doesn't really matter then.
But the 20th. Is open.
Tuesday.
I don't care.
Let's do it for the 20th.
Okay, let's do it on the 20th.
We're all either here.
I will be gone in July, but you guys will be just fine without me.
And then I'll be gone in August to clean up the mess.
You can make all of your girl jokes and all the stuff. I will be out of the
We
country.
don't do any of that. All right, anything else for the good of the road commission? All right, if nothing else, public comment. Did anyone-
one question.
If you could please come up and state your name and.
Greg Silva.
Oh,
Oh,
and
Kylie.
Kylie, even for a question, we have to read your public comment.
Okay.
Any person may make an advance appointment with the board regarding road commission topics for a regular special meeting in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. If an appointment is made, a topic will be an agenda item. The following applies to public comment. Please state his or her name and address. Topic must be relevant to the road commission. Individuals are allowed to speak once for up to 3 minutes on a single topic, which may be extended by the chair. A group addressing the board requires a designated spokesperson who may speak up to 10 minutes. The board will not act on any item from the public that is not on the agenda.
All right.
Greg Silva, Lakeshore Drive, Lake Township. There was a lot of discussion about traffic volume, especially on the local roads. Do you have current traffic volumes? When we met with the staff years ago, I got the impression you only do that once every 10 years. And maybe that.
In Slope Lake Shore, I believe it was around 400 cars a day.
I wasn't speaking of just Lakeshore, I'm talking in general.
It could be sporadic depending on.
But you have relatively current traffic volume.
I thought we got it on the website.
We take counts every year.
It's
not every road.
No, I was just saying, not every.
Not every road,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
it's probably cycles, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay, that might be something you might want to look at if you're gonna face local road with their traffic.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned.